I feel so incredibly lucky that we're going to hear the Grimm, some songs from Grimm played live by the master himself. One of my favorite soundtracks, a lot of people's favorite soundtracks of all time. Peter's amazing accomplishment. So I'm going to hand it over to Peter. Peter, take it away.
Thanks very much. I got to plug something in here. Hang on.
Hey everybody, it's Ron with Ron's Computer Videos. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day and spending it right here with us. We've got a great interview. Let's just get right into it. He's a musician, a composer, and scored some of your favorite adventure games and beyond. Peter McConnell. Peter, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. This is, I really, again, thank you so much for taking time and coming around to talk about this. I think that your contributions to adventure games and the LucasArts canon, it can't be understated. So much amazing music. So as somebody that's a huge fan of those games, thank you so much.
Well, shucks, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you, sir. But let's get started. What inspired you to become a musician, and did you grow up in a musical household?
Great question. I grew up in a music-loving household. When I was a very small guy, when I was like 6 months old, my father was a minister, and he was studying in Europe, and we were living in Basel, Switzerland at the time, and I had a severe throat situation which required surgery and all kinds of stuff, and basically the reason I'm telling you all this is that I couldn't talk or make noise for a very long time. And so when I finally could, it was like just this incredible release, and the first thing that I did was, I'm told, I don't remember, but the first thing I did was basically I started singing. And I was, always just absolutely captivated by music. My dad had a reel-to-reel tape machine that had two things on it that I remember. One was Mozart, which singing that definitely got I impressed the doctors by singing Mozart. And then Sons of the Pioneers, which is a cowboy band, a great sort of Americana band from the 30s through the 50s, and like I know all their songs. And so I've always had these two sides of me, which is sort of this classical side, and also this folk, specifically American folk side. And when we moved, that continued when we moved back here from Switzerland. We lived in Kentucky, and there was bluegrass playing on local TV stations. Earl Scruggs had a TV show from West Virginia back in those days, and I just always was, I was interested in lots of things growing up, but music was always the thing that was like the refuge for me. And we lived in a lot of places, so I was exposed to a lot of different kinds of music. And so when I went to college, I started out majoring in physics, but I had sort of a conversion experience, and I took some time off. I switched to music, and one of my housemates, Michael Land, was also a musician, and we were in bands together. And I'm trying to compress a lot of time into a little bit of talking, but he moved out here. We were working at a company called Lexicon, which makes black boxes musicians play their instruments through. So we had got this experience doing audio coding. I kind of could combine my physics and music knowledge to do that, right? But really, I just wanted to play music. And when Michael and I hatched a plan to start a band and do it in San Francisco, he came out to San Francisco, got a job at LucasArts. By the time I got out here, the band thing kind of went to the back burner, and what he was doing at LucasArts was very interesting. So we started working on this system called iMUSE together, which is a adaptive music system. It's one of the first adaptive music systems, and we learned an incredible amount, by doing that, by having that experience. And we also were able to write music for our system that we wrote, and that was the first of those titles was the Monkey Island 2. Michael did Monkey Island 1, we did Monkey Island 2 together. And from there were other titles: X-Wing, TIE Fighter, Indian the Fate of Atlantis, Sam and Max Hit the Road, and then with LucasArts sort of underwent a technological change there, and the whole industry did, between sound cards that play synthesizer music and sound cards that play, or computers that play streamed audio. And that had a big impact on our system. It also had a big impact on our composing. And so with the first LucasArts title that did that was called Rebel Assault. And it was coded by a genius guy named Vince Lee. And shortly after that, we made the iMUSE system all digital. And we did scores like Full Throttle, and then Grim Fandango, Monkey Island 3. All these were live recorded audio, and that was a big difference. The cards that I will say, I've been around for a while, so I've seen a lot of changes in the games industry and just sort of in sort of music tech, as in general. And so when I was coming out of school, it was the 1980s, and music was going through an incredible transformation because of something called MIDI, which is it's a communication protocol between synthesizers, and it's pretty much responsible for like the entire sound of the 1980s if you think of pop music. And one big moment for me, see, I was a teaching assistant, which is kind of a fancy way of saying a graduate with nothing better to do. I was a teaching assistant at the Harvard Electronic Music Studio, and at that time, this is the summer of 1984. I'm pretty sure. I walked out and saw a sign that said Stevie Wonder, playing at Sanders Theater. I'm like, wow, okay. And what it was the Harvard Black Law Students Association had invited Stevie Wonder to come and play, and at Sanders Theater. So it was at Sanders Theater is a fairly small venue, and so it was this once in a lifetime opportunity to see Stevie play solo with nothing but a keyboard and a drum machine. And the reason I'm bringing up this experience is that he had this synthesizer that he kept playing. He had the drum machine, he had the synthesizer, he had the microphone, and he did, just absolutely amazing show. Did a call and response with "You Are the Sunshine of My Life" with the whole audience. And I can still remember, "You are my sunshine." He got the whole audience to do the "Are My Sunshine" part, right? And then and over that he sang, "You are the sunshine of my life," right? And when he was done, one of the there was a Q&A session, and one of the audience members said, "What in the hell is that thing that you're playing?" Because he was playing this synthesizer that was like, "What is that? It sounds like nothing I've ever before." He said, "It's called a DX7." And that was that was a particular kind of, for those geeks out there, that was a particular moment of revolution in electronic music and pop music, that we all were part of and completely affected by, since the sound cards that played those early games essentially were a very trimmed down DX7 in a little box. So yeah, bit of a technical detour there, but that was a big formative factor, if you will, in the technology that we worked on at LucasArts.
Oh yeah, I will say that the DX7 absolutely changed everything, and if you, like you said, you can't escape music in the 1980s. Like, everybody had a DX7, and there's a lot of bands that still will pull that out today. I know that Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails is like a big DX7 guy. Yeah, so that's still part of the loadout when they go and play a concert, because I think it's one of the early albums. It's all DX7. So yeah,
the entire Brothers in Arms, Dire Straits brother, very different genre, but entire Dire Straits Brothers in Arms album, that's all DX7, and and plus obviously guitars and bass and drums and stuff. But it's so much, it really was a big part of that MTV sound, if you will.
Yes. You talked a little bit about how you were in college and you were going for like a physics education. You had that revelation. You decided that you were going to pursue music as a profession. And you also talked about a little bit about some of those early influences, like with like bluegrass and a lot of sort of that early Western sound. So I'm guessing that you were a fan of like Buster Scruggs and Oh Brother Where Art Thou, because that seems like both of those films, like the Coen brothers, reintroduced a generation to some of those songs, like the Tumbling Tumbleweed and I'm drawing a blank, but that whole
big confession. Genre. I've still never seen Oh Brother Where Art Thou, but I did see Buster Scruggs, and I did see Bill Monroe. Was it Bill Monroe? Yeah, I think it was Bill Monroe play live. And
wow! I was going to say, if it's bluegrass, it's Bill Monroe.
Yeah. And no, actually, it wasn't. Let me think. No, I'm sorry, Ralph Stanley. Similar generation, right? Yes. And Ralph Stanley just lasted a little longer than Bill. I grew up a huge John Hartford fan, and Glen Campbell fan. Glen Campbell is, he was sort of a pop country singer, but he's so underrated as a guitarist. He was a studio. He's on all these incredible records, and he was like one of the best studio session players of his day. It was just anyway. I love that sort of you know, that things between country and bluegrass are a big favorite of mine and always have been.
Yeah, I very much like that genre, and I very like kind of that bent genre between country and bluegrass, and I definitely love that era of music too. So, you many times you talk about that you're kind of like there's a lot of people that will say that they're like, oh, I like all kinds of music, and it's but you really like all kinds of music. So
yeah, my sort of kind of age-old quip about that is a lot of people say they like all kinds of music, and what they mean is everything from Led Zeppelin to AC/DC. And I really do like all kinds of music. There are very, very few types of music that I dislike. Like I like Muzak even. I don't like bad reggae. I'll confess that. I don't like, but good reggae is like one of my favorite. It's funny. It's sort of like but yeah, I'm genre agnostic. I just love all kinds. It's partly because I've lived so many places, and I've played a lot of those things. I play things with strings on them, so I play 5-string banjo, mandolin, guitars, fiddle and violin. I was classically trained, I just think that folk music in general, it has a depth to it that and I think this is why it had such a big popularity, and I would say now is having a resurging popularity, that it has a depth to it that goes beyond the present moment. And in a time when we're all just we have goldfish length attention spans, I think people crave some kind of anchor that extends beyond this November 18th 2025 11:23 a.m. This is where this is where we all are these days, and I think a lot of people like something that has maybe a little more heft or depth or history to it, and that's one of the reasons I like as folk and classical music.
Absolutely. I think that that the pandemic slowed everybody down a little bit and gave us maybe a little more time to kind of think about like what things were important and what things we really enjoy, especially when we had lots of time to consume media. And that is when a lot of people were like, you know what, I've always wanted to learn the mandolin, or I've always wanted to learn the hurdy-gurdy, or just whatever that might be, to kind of pursue all of those things. And then also get a newfound love and understanding for the music of kind of like those different instruments and those different eras. But you're 100% right that a lot of that music is such an anchor for us as kind of as a nation, and us as fans of music, that you can go back and you can be like, this stuff is still great. Like, you can pull an Alison Krauss record where it's basically doing what would be the country equivalent of like torchlight songs, and still love that in 2025, just as people did when those songs were brand new in the 1930s and 40s.
Full disclosure, I think Alison was I believe she was a class ahead of me.
it's okay.
But anyway, I think this this country, there are very few. I mean, everybody has sort of, I think, national music, right? They have music that, Poland has an airport named after Chopin, which I just think is awesome. But we do have a very particular kind of American folk tradition that is part of our soul. And when I was growing up, we learned Woody Guthrie's "This Land Is Your Land," which was it was kind of an unofficial national anthem in some ways, and I think that's a tremendous source of strength.
Absolutely. Yeah, Woody Guthrie is another one of those people that's absolutely just so
Yeah.
instrumental to like that American, like the roots of American music.
Yes.
I know that you were a big I would argue, and a lot of people will back me up, that like, you know, in terms of like what is American music, jazz, absolutely.
Yes.
Jazz is American music.
It is.
And I'm one of those people that are I'm hitting the dial on the public radio every Sunday to listen to jazz programming and things. So I'm absolutely the target for all of that.
Yeah, I would say one of my like major transformative college experiences, besides dropping out of physics, was the jazz course that I took, and there was basically what it was famous jazz musicians would come and give a lecture and just tell you what it's like. So we had John Schofield and Milt Hinton and Illinois Jack Cat, and I'm gonna forget some of the others, but you know, people who had really, like Milt Hinton had you know, played with Louis Armstrong.
Mm-hmm.
They call him Louis. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was a bad. I'm betrayed. My jazz course compatriots would be like, what, Louis? And it was just amazing to see, you know, people who had lived. Some of them had lived in a different era and played in a different era. Some of them, like John Schofield, were more contemporary at the time, and just see the, you know, just what this sort of depth of what they were doing, and this sort of improvisatory art form, which is really, you know, it's singular. Jazz, it has a kind of improvisation that pretty much no other art form has, and other, you know, classical music used to have more of an improvisatory tradition than it does now. I mean, Bach would, when he would enter organ competitions, which he won with great regularity, he would, one of the things you were supposed to do was improvise a fugue. So, you know, they give you a subject and you play a fugue on it in front of everybody. So it used to be, improvisation used to be much more in the Western tradition, but you know, by the 19th century, it had been pretty ossified in that sense, and jazz really is such a pure, because it comes out of work music, in the fields.
Mm-hmm.
It is its own sort of amazing thing, and yeah, that had a huge influence on me. And with titles like Grim Fandango, that's something where I learned a lot. I learned a lot about improvisation doing Grim Fandango, because I was I was lucky to work with some pretty amazing improvisers.
Absolutely. But music is such a great tool. It's an amazing way to tell stories. I don't think that computer gaming would have come as far as it has, storytelling wise, without the ability to basically use music to carry those emotional cues and things like that. So I think you have to have that improvisational sort of background, because as you watch, as the story sort of develops, that you have to be able to kind of like dip into those things and make the audience feel something more than just like a static image or something on the screen. So such an amazing talent that to be able to do those things. So that's why I love kind of just even being an observer to that world, because it just makes you feel things. That's such a silly thing. It's like music made me feel things. Yes, of course it did. But I think that the jazz and the improvisational nature of it, where it's oftentimes I mean, I think recordings have made it to the point where people have like an expectation of how a song sounds, but to be able to go and to listen something at a live music that there is always that a little bit of that improvisational feeling to things where you are caught in the emotions of the musicians as well. And it's a tough experience to explain, but I think that when everybody is done watching the interview, you need to go investigate live music. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is, and it's a lot better live than it is on a YouTube video.
It is.
We were very lucky during Grim Fandango came out at a time, or was under development at a time, when there was a major swing scene in San Francisco. So there was a part of the Mission District where you could just pretty much walk from club to club and see all these amazing people play, and not to mention go around the corner and have a burrito at the taqueria and see some amazing mariachi musicians, right?
Yeah.
So the entire Grimm score was actually born out of the live experience of just walking around the Mission and meeting those musicians and recording them.
Yeah, it's that's another thing. I like how America is starting to embrace like mariachi and norte and banda. I love banda. I know lots of people don't, but it feels like country music in a way to me too, because it kind of is. But but yeah, I get it. But let me ask you, when did you really? Because I know that you got away from the physics, you got away from kind of the sciences, and well, I mean, music is a science really, but in a way. But you transferred over to this other kind of career field. I know that you had some involvement with computers early, but when did you really get interested in computers and maybe using computers to make music?
That was probably, well, that would have been when I took the electronic music course at school, and and I took a programming course, and I took a computer course in high school too. I mean, I remember, even when I was a little kid, going over to a friend of mine's house, and he had a stack of IBM computer cards. I'm like, what are those? And no one knows what those things are anymore. But that's how you used to do business programming on an IBM mainframe. He wrote in something called JCL. But I digress. It's funny. I be honest with you, I have a love-hate relationship with computers, because most of the time I'm cussing at them because they're not doing what I want them to do. Pro Tools comes to mind. But everything that we do is somehow connected to a computer, and everything that it's completely embedded in the fabric of life now. And if so we're expending untold resources to develop AI, and who knows what that's going to do. But I think I guess my feeling is they're an incredibly useful and powerful tool, and I've always both appreciated that and also had a hankering to keep music coming through the actual physical airwaves. I just love the sound of an acoustic instrument. So how to use computers in that regard is that's what I focus on. I'm always using computers. I'm always using software. I did help develop a system that plays music in a game, but to me it's all a means toward an end, which is to create music.
Absolutely. Well, we talked a little bit about your influences. We talked about your education. We talked about kind of a little bit of the tools of the trade. when you were in school, you were friends with Michael Land. Later, you joined him over at LucasArts. So maybe we could talk a little bit about your time of joining the team at LucasArts, working with Michael Land on the creation of iMUSE. Maybe a little bit for people that may not know what iMUSE is, and what some of maybe the technical challenges were that the iMUSE system addressed.
So when I moved out to the Bay Area, Michael, I was still doing like contract programming work for my employer Lexicon, and Michael had gotten this job at LucasArts to essentially start an audio department there. And as I mentioned earlier, we had previously had a plan to start a band, and that was kind of we kind of did our own separate bands at that time. But the whole band thing was kind of sidelined a bit by sort of this new thing that Michael was working on, and he invited me to come in to LucasArts and see, an early version of Monkey 2 with the LeChuck theme playing. I still remember the LeChuck theme was playing, and these little pixelated characters are walking around on the screen. And I think he said, I'm working on this thing. I think that I think music in games could be more fluid. I think it could be more interactive as opposed to just like a little loop that plays and then stops when you do something. And here's what I've got so far on that. And I think when we were looking at this sort of little screen with pixelated characters on it, that's not what we were seeing. What we were seeing was a future where the characters are quite realistic and there's like real drama going on, and the music is played by live musicians, and it's completely going with the flow of what's going on in the game. And that was, as a technical challenge, that was pretty interesting. And so we would basically, so I sort of got hired, I guess you would say, as a consultant for us to develop this system. And we basically took long walks and talked about how it would work. That was probably most of the development, was these long walks. How would this work? How would that work? And it turned out that we both worked for this company Lexicon, and we both worked on what are called embedded systems and audio gear. And it turned out that an embedded system is a pretty good metaphor for a game, because it has a primary processor and a DSP processor, and then a secondary processor that kind of mediates between what's going on with the user input to the primary processor and what's going on in the DSP. And even the language that we use to describe some of the parameters that are things that you control in the system came from our experience programming for effects processors. So we were just lucky to have that knowledge, right? We're lucky to have that knowledge and some musical knowledge and just interest, and just be at the right spot with all those things to come up with this system called iMUSE. And what iMUSE does is it essentially mediates between what's going on in the game with the user input and what's going on in the music. And our sort of metaphor for that was the pit orchestra in a musical. Like, if I played in a pit orchestra back in high school, and there are situations where the conductor is always looking at what's going on stage, and may do something like, especially in a curtain call situation, where it's like, all right, jump to the end. When you get to bar 32, jump, to the end now, right? And then everybody goes there. Everybody goes to the coda of the piece. So that's a metaphor. There were really two metaphors. One was a Lexicon effects processor, and the other was a pit orchestra. And what the iMUSE system does is it pays attention to user input, and then changes the music. But it only changes the music when it's musically acceptable to do so. And that putting in the little messages that tell you when it's okay to make a change. That process is part of making an interactive score in iMUSE, and this is the same process. Similar processes are used with modern systems like Wise and FMON, both which are excellent systems that do similar stuff to what we did. Yeah, so that's essentially what it was. That's what the iMUSE system was.
Yeah, well, it's really amazing because again, like you just mentioned, that it's when it's musically appropriate to make the change. Because in the previous era, it's basically you enter a room, here's the music that you would listen to or whatever's been scored for that particular scene, and like especially earlier SCUMM games. And if you left the room and you went back in, it just start the track over. It didn't matter what was actually happening. Just dump right back into that audio. So in Monkey 2, there's lots of great times where it's just sort of like, I'm trying to think, like maybe a good example would be there's a contest where you have to like see who can spit the furthest. And like the music sort of like, depending on how you're doing and what things, I mean, it doesn't just play a background track. You're going, you have to kind of very quickly do an action, and then you spit, and the music kind of swells and does a little funny thing. So that's it adds a lot, because again, it's storytelling all in itself. So that you just referred to is also one of the very first examples of sound design that we used in those games, because it was either me or Clint. I think it was Clint who did the sound. Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, because
we spent some time getting just right.
And yes, there's a lot of like digital sound effect type of stuff that we're adding, more than just a click or like I'm turning the lock on something or whatever. That it's you can have like a little monkey screech or whatever it was that adds a lot to the sound design kind of that game. But with the creation of iMUSE, I think it totally opens up, because the feel of the games changes, and the music almost becomes like a character that you could kind of count on for, like you here's the hero, he's got his little jaunty music, the villain comes in, it doesn't just dump to the villain soundtrack, you get like that blend of music like you would with a live performance. So I would say like Monkey Island 2, and again, this is kind of the beginning effort on that, but like the music in like Day of the Tentacle, especially like with moving between the eras and things like that, because you could just on a dime move between two scenes with the time travel aspect of the game, and now you're listening to sort of an old-timey version of whatever that music was you were just listening to a second ago, and you could just add a click move between those time periods, and for the system to just pick up and go without like there being any break in the action is just absolutely genius. But those like Day of the Tentacle and Sam & Max and all of that type of stuff, I think that kind of very much represents kind of that classic era of LucasArts games and the iMUSE system. And again, it's the logo for iMUSE is over everything. I cannot imagine the technical, because it seems like SCUMM as like the engine for those games. It was always like growing a new little bud that would do this other thing or whatever. I cannot imagine what the technical trouble was with trying to get iMUSE integrated into that. But given all the geniuses at LucasArts in those days, I'm sure they obviously figured it out.
Well, it was actually, I'd say in some ways a little bit of more of a political hurdle than a technical one, because in fact that's why the system has a name. Essentially when we did the first iteration of the system, it took up an entire floppy disk, and in those days the games. The Monkey games shipped on floppy disks. Instead, it went from 5 disks to 6, if I remember correctly. And that was first of all, that was very rude. Okay, honestly, it's like, you know, this you're just adding an enormous amount to the cost of goods by having your system, right? So it was, so we were kind of, you know, a little bit on the hot seat for having, like, what do you mean the new sound drivers are taking up an entire floppy disk, right? And I was like, okay, well, first of all, we better not be calling them the new sound drivers, because if you're a computer person, you know that drivers are very small. And however, engines, interactive music and sound engine, engines can be bigger.
Yes.
So we named the system an engine, which it is. It's not a driver, actually. It has intelligence that goes beyond what would have been traditionally. So we would always refer to it as an engine or a system, and that helped sort of calm some of the concerns about it. But to be honest, and this was part of the evolution in developing that system, the amount of programmer time that we injected into the process by having our system in Monkey 2 was kind of unacceptably high. I mean, essentially with every piece, the composer had to sit over the shoulder of the scripter of the game, and then they had to, okay, set this thing here. Okay, when this happens, do this, and when this happens, do that. And it was quite time consuming and not great for the budget. And this was at a time when LucasArts was beginning to realize that, you know, we're losing money and that's not good. And so all of these factors, you know, you do things in the real world. And all these factors combined to sort of get us to say, okay, well, we need to actually make the iMUSE system a little bit more independent and smart, so that it just responds to generic game sort of parameters that are easy to set and don't have to be, you know, micromanaged. And so that was, you know, sort of step 2 or of that development, was to make the system so that it was a little more, you know, a little, had as much of the intelligence as it could, so that would be kind of in the composer's ballpark rather than in the scripter's ballpark. And you know, and even that was beyond that. I mean, with Grim Fandango, then you know, the last thing you want to do when it's like 3 in the morning and you're you know, inspired and you're writing music and then you want it to work with the scene, the last thing you want to do is bring up a C script, which is what we had to do at that time. And so we developed the system further so that it was more data driven and more template based, without sacrificing any of the power of it. And you know, a little more right brain than left brain, so that you didn't have to jump out of your right brain and go into the left and be all sort of detail oriented when you really don't want to be, when you're in a different kind of process. So and you know, this is, you know, I think systems like Wise in particular, I think, have a very good interface these days that you know, tries its best to. It's hard to do. It's hard to really be in the left brain when you're doing this kind of work, but I'm using the old left brain, right? I guess that's it. That's sort of debunked, isn't it? But the old way of thinking is that the left brain's the creative side, sorry, the left brain is the OCD side, and the right brain is the creative side. And anyway, that's what I mean. You don't want to be. I'm not going to claim to be a neurobiologist right now, but you want to be in your creative side as much as possible, and you don't want to be tinkering with, because there's nothing wrong with being a programmer and tinkering and making stuff. It's just a different process than writing music. So
sure. You don't want to pull yourself away from that creative mojo that you've got to be thinking about more of the analytical kind of things.
Yeah,
I get it. Absolutely.
And that's even true within the composition process. Like, you know, it's like, are you going to sit and think too much about, you know, whether the fifth is in the bass of the chord or not. They're you want to stay. I think you want to temper your experience and make it not too technical, and maybe not all the way, not lacking technical facility, but keep it in the intuitive realm.
Sure. Well, there is definitely what feels, at least to me, that there are kind of eras in that of LucasArts with the gaming and things. And the iMUSE era, there are a lot of titles in there that are absolute bangers. They are classics. People will still be talking about them in 50 years. You blink, but I don't know. There's a lot of nostalgia for all of this.
No,
And
I see it. I see it. It's just it's just wild. When
Yeah.
when we were doing that, I don't think we anticipated having 30-year anniversaries of these titles, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, they made a big impact, that's for sure. But of that kind of what I would call the classic era of the adventure games, like you've got like Monkey 2 and Fate of Atlantis and Day of the Tentacle, Sam and Max. Full Throttle might be right on the edge of that. But I would save that for, I would almost call that more the modern era for those.
Yeah, it is.
Of that, yeah, of that original classic era, which was the most fun to work on? Which score?
That's not a good question. They all had their ups and downs.
Mhm.
And they were all fun to work on. Any project that's worth its salt is going to have some a little bit of anxiety associated with it, because you want to do a good job, and usually you're under some kind of a deadline and have to conform to some kind of a budget. So there's the reality of doing stuff is always it. I'm sure it's like making movies. It's and there can be certain projects that are maybe more blessed or cursed than others. But I think of the ones you mentioned, they just all had their sort of little dramas, and all of them had a great deal of satisfaction associated with making them.
Okay, I will accept that they're all great because I agree with that assessment. So, if I had to pick one though, I would say the game that I spent the most time in is Day of the Tentacle, and I feel like
It's
because I mean there's a lot riding because it's a sequel. So there's a lot of people that went in with expectations and with preconceptions of what a sequel was going to look like, especially after you've had the original game on so many different platforms. You have the Nintendo Entertainment System version of the game, which has kind of the best version of sound for any of the Maniac Mansion releases, at least music wise. But like Day of the Tentacle is just like it blew me away. It was like I saw the intro, and there's music that kind of plays at the beginning that like sets the stage for the rest of the story, and I think people still use that as a demo at like vintage computer shows and things like that, just because the music is really great, the visuals are really great, and it lets you know that you're going to have a really great time for the next 4 to 6 hours.
That's also Tim Schafer's first project lead, if I recall correctly, and I sure know he wrote that intro, that was a very special game. I think that in terms of like artistic, I mean, fun to work on is not like there's fun and then there's anything time you're doing something worthwhile. I think there's fun and there's satisfaction, and they're two different things, right?
Sure.
I think in terms of just like artistic satisfaction, Grimm has to stand out above for me.
Absolutely.
Because just the ability to work with these incredible musicians and to write a live music score was truly that was transformative for me.
Absolutely.
And so
Well, we can
and
talk
it
a
was
tiny
really,
bit
yeah.
about that modern era, because Grim for the modern era, Grim Fandango cannot be beat. This is such an amazing game. The soundtrack is awesome. Kind of in preparation for the interview today, I rewatched the 25th anniversary concert that
Mhm.
was recorded like
Right.
in 2023. Absolutely amazing. It's like the music on this game is so great. Grim Fandango with sort of it's very much a change. Like the game is a real change in terms of like how those games
Hmm.
were, you interacted with the games, the music. There was so much amazing music. Let's talk about Full Throttle for just a minute. Why don't we talk about like working on the score for that movie and maybe working with the Gone Jackals?
So, yeah, but Tim wanted to do a motorcycle game. There are a few stories I can tell you about that. Uh, the One of them, gosh, I don't know if I should tell this one.
Well, don't get in trouble.
So, when Tim wanted to do he wanted to do I guess what I'm going to do is leave the names out.
Okay.
Tim wanted to do a motorcycle game, and it was
Mhm.
like, and we knew that, okay, it's going to be a rock and roll game, okay, and so what can we do? This is going to be the first game that LucasArts does that has rock and roll in it. Let's
Mhm.
do a rock and roll band, right? And at the same time, Jack Sorensen, who was the business business manager, business development um, manager at the time, he had been before he was an executive, he had been in a punk rock band, and had always had an interest in rock and roll, and he had come across an opportunity to license the entire catalog of the Velvets, Velvet Underground.
Mhm.
And so I and so he came to me and said, this could be pretty cool for Full Throttle. I mean, the Velvet Underground is one of the coolest bands of all time. And so I listened to first of all, yes, the Velvet Underground is arguably one. It's certainly in the top 3 of coolest bands of all time. That first record they made, Brian Eno said of the first Velvet's record, well, it may have only sold 2,000 copies, but every one of those 2,000 people went out and started a band. And that just, if you're talking about like the
Mhm.
real deal, the Velvets
Yeah.
are the real
Mhm.
deal, right? So I listened to everything they'd ever done. We put it in with the game, and Tim and I sort of looked at this and we're like, this is absolutely fantastic music. I love it. It's wrong for a motorcycle game. And at the same time, Tim had put in a just as temp music. This was at a time. This is sort of the big kind of grunge era had come out, and there were some major bands that were just really, had a big sound,
Mhm.
like Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, and it's the whole like, and so there was some pretty hefty, uh, tough guy music that was very popular at the time, right?
Mhm.
And so he had one of those tunes in there, and we're like, well, this is working, right? So Jack and Tim went down to a major label in LA that was that was that had on its roster some of these bands, and one in particular that Tim was interested in. And this is how I was told the meeting went. They go up to the top floor of record company who shall go unmentioned, and there's a big long table, and all these eager assistants are there, and says, well, Mr. M will be with you right away. So they're sitting around, they're waiting for Mr. M, and finally Mr. M shows up, and and he turns to assistant number one and he says, "Well, suppose you tell me what this is all about." Assistant number one says, "Well, Mr. M, these two gentlemen are from LucasArts, George Lucas's game company, and they are interested in one of our top tier bands to be, to use as underscore for one of George Lucas's video games, right?" And Mr. M says, "Yeah, I knew all that. I just wanted to hear it from you to make sure you thought it through." And at this point, it was pretty clear to Tim and Jack that this meeting wasn't going to go anywhere, right? And indeed, it did not.
Oh gosh.
So they came back from LA saying, "You know what? I think the major label band thing is probably not going to happen. So why don't you go out and find Peter? Why don't you go out and find him a biker band?" Mm-hmm. Well, I had my own sort of alt rock band at the time, and honestly, for the life of me, I can't remember how I did this, but I made it known somehow through various connections. Say, "Hey, LucasArts is looking for a band for a biker game. Send me demos." And I just got floods of cassettes, right? And I'd drive to band practice every night and just randomly pop a cassette in, right? And I've learned as a musician, I've learned, having been in this role as a music director, right, that you don't have much time to impress people. And what I've found is it's about 5 seconds. If you put a tape in or click on an MP3 file or whatever, mm-hmm. and if it's not doing something for you in about 5 seconds, which is longer than you think it is, it's 1,000, 1,002, right? But if it's not doing something for you, then it's likely not going to work. So I was pretty ruthless with the cassettes, right? And I'm driving along, I put one in, and drive along, another one, and put one in. And by the way, I did neglect to mention something. One of these cassettes was actually driven to me and delivered by hand by a guy on a bike. And that guy was Keith Karloff.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And his band mm-hmm. was the Gone Jackals. Yep. And he rode his bike up to LucasArts, parked it in front of it, handed me the cassette. And, but, being completely even-keeled and fair-minded about this, I wouldn't look at any of it. I just popped them in and listened to them. And mm-hmm. I popped, and one after the other, here's a sort of a Leonard Skinner clone, whatever, that's not working. This isn't working. This is like, what's this? It's cocktail jazz. Why am I getting this one? And then I'm driving along. I put one in, and it's ba-da-ba-ba, 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 right? And I'm like, whoa, what's that? That's only like 3 seconds, by the way. And I listened to the whole thing. I said, well, this is the band. And it turned out to be the Gone Jackals, and it was the cassette that had been driven to me on a bike. So that's an amazing story. That's how we got the band, and it was it was. I mean, Keith is he's still playing. He lives in Spain now. Mm-hmm. His band plays like pretty much every other week, and he's still doing it, and he's still doing it really well, and he's doing it on his terms. I've always had incredible respect for Keith. That's awesome. The soundtrack is great. I cannot imagine that there's lots of things like, I have a friend who was working on a game. He had something all worked out with Rush to provide music for the game. Mm-hmm. And it was like, everything was basically ready to go. And it was like final signatures with the record company. And they were like, no, wait. What is this? A video game? No. And this was like in 99 or something like that. So in the 90s, the record companies they would be of one of two minds. One would be, well, why aren't we making millions off of this? And it's like, well, you don't understand. Games actually aren't that big. They weren't mm-hmm. in those days, right? And then the other would be, well, this isn't anything. This isn't, this is too podunk for us to think about, which is
Yeah.
maybe what you're talking about. And it's like, well, that's not right either.
Right.
If you had any business sense and were watching what was going on, maybe you would take
Yeah.
this more seriously.
Hmm.
But and we all have seen what's happened to the record industry
Oh yeah.
since then. But yeah, it was a hard sell in both directions in those days.
Hmm. Absolutely. But I cannot imagine. Well, he ended up going and scoring the entire movie himself. He's a musician, and so he just was like, "What are you going to do? I can own the rights to my own music, I guess." And I can't imagine any other soundtrack other than the one that's in the final game.
That's
I
fair.
cannot imagine a version of Full Throttle that had, some like a Pearl Jam or something underneath it,
Yeah.
or a Red Hot Chili Peppers song in there. I
Yeah.
can't imagine that being a thing. But
And well, I love those bands too. But I think part of the problem too there was that had we gone that route, had we used a major label band, it would have been licensing. It would have taken the game out of its own time frame, which is sort of nebulous and fanciful, and put it right into an era of pop music, which really it would have been selling the game short in an odd way.
Yeah. And I would say
So we
based
were
on the
lucky.
story, based on the visuals, based on everything that's kind of going on in this universe with like levitating cars, things like that, it does. It might have been a disservice to tie it to a specific era, especially.
Yeah.
I mean, people could listen to music and it's like, oh, it's my worst Mark Hamill, but it's I got an audio tape right here, and whatever. But it's so I mean, again, I can't imagine it with any band other than the Gone Jackals, because it just so perfectly fits sort of the feel and kind of the grunge of the game. It's and then the all the incidental music and all the bits that kind of like tie all of these scenes together, because that game definitely is maybe a little more linear than some of the other ones, maybe by design, because you are trying to get from here to there story wise.
It's also limited somewhat by the performance of a CD of a CD-ROM. So you can't quite jump around. There were technical reasons why Full Throttle had to be the way it was, in terms of you do one thing and you do another. At least as I understand it, there were.
Mm-hmm. Like it's very much like you're in this. Here's a scene. You have three goals, and you might go off on tangents and do those things, but you are kind of in this little playpen for a bit. Right. So it feels different, but the music very much it's basically its own character in the game, and it really, really rocks. It's really, really great. That's for sure. And I can see where it helped kind of maybe with some of the later titles and stuff that came out. But rock music is great, don't get me wrong, but again, I'm a big fan of jazz. I'm a big fan of Grim Fandango. I will crow about it until the heat death of the universe, that everybody needs to play this game at least once. If it gets to it, just play through year one. Year one is so amazing. It's a nice, tight little story. It could have ended at year one and ended on a cliffhanger, and still would have been an amazing game. But the music in this is just so amazing. That 25th anniversary concert that I brought up a couple times, which absolutely everybody should watch, is just a greatest hits of the tracks in the game. But you had talked about how that game taught you so much about improvisation and music and things like that. Did it help expand your love of jazz?
Oh, for sure. Because I'm not really a jazz musician. Like, I haven't spent the 10,000 hours of woodshedding that it takes to really improvise in all keys and that idiom. I mean, and at the end of the day, I'm really a composer. It's like it's what I order things offline, if you will, right? And I do like to improvise and rock and roll, because that's something that I've just kind of done over time. But to me, jazz it's almost like this unattainable, sort of amazing thing, and as such, being able to work with musicians who really do that kind of improv was just such a gift. And I will say that I learned. I mean, for example, when I would do all the pieces, I would go ahead and sketch out like some kind of a solo, for example, on some of them, right? And some of those I kept. Like I actually improvised the piano solo in the bebop song and the Blue Casket. I still don't know how I did that, because it's pretty good, I think, for me anyway.
Oh yeah, and it sounds even better in the remaster. The instruments are so much cleaner. Yeah.
Well, the remaster is it was a mix at Sony, and they did a great job. And also I changed some of, like, the piano sound is different in the remaster than it was in the original. I got a chance to address a bunch of issues in the remaster that we just didn't have time to deal with in the original. But hopefully, though, I did not fall prey to the Han shot first.
It's even worse than that, because these days it's McClunky. So because there's the Han shot first. That was the first change, and then I guess when they were going to come out with Blu-ray or discs or something, there was another remastering and retinkering, and Greedo actually, like, right before he gets shot, says McClunky. It's the weirdest thing. It was. Well, that's
funny.
I know. You can Google it. They just kept tinkering with it. It's like, oh gosh.
And here I thought I was a Star Wars. I didn't know about that one. But,
it's the weirdest thing. It's somebody pointed it out, that it was like, here's something that they stuck in for some reason. After all these years and after all the criticism, it's like, just leave it. Yeah. It's fine. But I mean, George himself would say, like, no project is ever truly finished. It's merely abandoned. So you just, there's always something that you wish you could have stuck in there. But I guess the George Lucas sort of directed Blu-rays and stuff like that, this was going to be something that was in there. And then there's clips of it online. You can go out and feel the secondhand embarrassment for yourself.
Oh dear. Okay. Well,
yeah. But
we're big fans. We're big fans. I grew up my kids grew up being taken out to the ranch by me, and learning all about the lore. So we have great respect for the lore.
Don't get me wrong. My son's name is Obi.
Okay.
So we get Star Wars in this house for sure. So lots of respect for Star Wars.
Well, go ahead.
Please finish. Sorry.
So we were talking about, I think we're talking about Grimm Remastered, and just, that I had some opportunities to fix some things, but what that came out of was when I was originally doing the, when I was originally recording it, I would notate out solos for people to play, because that's, when you do the demo, you're going to demo a solo too, right? And so I had Ralph Carney in the studio. Ralph Carney was, he's no longer with us, but he was an amazing multi-wind player. I saw him play with Beck, and he played regular with Tom Waits, and he was just a one-of-a-kind musician, very, very intuitive, and just anyway. I had this tune for Glottis's gambling. It wasn't exactly the gambling scene, but it was when he's actually. I think it's actually when he goes to the place where he starts gambling, and it goes da 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 da. It's a very simple riff, and it goes on, and it goes into a solo, and I had it notated out. So, and what I learned after about 3 takes was that it wasn't that Ralph couldn't read; it was that he really did not want to. And there's a difference. And so after and it took a while, and it probably took like 6. I don't know how many takes it took, but it was just like, what are you doing? This guy's an improviser. Just to throw out the solo you wrote, and he first take he just did this monster thing that's just so friggin' cool, and that's what's on the on the record, as it were. That's what's in the game, is his just amazing take. And so I learned from that, let people do what they do best, and when you're writing for people, keep that in mind. I've never forgotten that.
Well, you worked on so many titles over the years. The remaster on Grim Fandango was absolutely amazing. It was nice to be able to play it, because you really couldn't for a number of years, just to technical issues with Windows,
Right.
and
Yeah.
the speed of machines and things like that. So it's nice that this stuff is now out there preserved, so that way that and not just available on Windows, but it's available multi-platform across
Right.
like a ton of different places where you can pick it up. So it's nice that it's out there for people to continue
Yeah,
to enjoy.
it's really great just playing Grim on the iPad. That's how my kids have played it, and it's just a really nice. You can hold it, but it still looks really good, and
Yes.
it kind of lends itself to that sort of touch screen iPad thing. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. But the I like the interface and stuff too, because it kind of picks up that full throttle thing, where it's just sort of like you have that central hub for actions and things, and you can scroll through your inventory of items. That's
Yeah.
the entire thing is very inspired. It's again one of my very, very favorite games. So
Yeah, that's
I even keep
certainly
all the
one of
little
my
merch
favorite.
out on the desk all the time. So, but you've composed for so many other games for LucasArts and stuff. You did a lot of Star Wars titles and things like that. Just really quickly, what was there? How did you deal with like fan expectations? Because again, you have that John Williams score. I'm sure that is very much a kind of like some guardrails that you have to kind of stay inside, but then also create all of this energetic music that kind of keeps you moving forward with whatever that specific game. And these are more action titles and stuff too. How was developing for those games different than these adventure games that have a slower pace?
Well, so first of all, I was pretty much in the 90s, whatever, until I left in 2000 with Michael and Clint. Clint Bajakian, who's another redoubtable composer and a founding member of the LucasArts sound department. So during that whole time, I was pretty much the John Williams music editor, and there's only like 3 hours of John Williams music in the canonical films, in the first 3 films. And so that's a challenge, because we had so many games to put out, and you had to find creative ways to like reuse the music. But really the first thing I want to say about that is what a privilege it was to work with that music, because when you really when you have to edit it, you have to listen to it very carefully, and it is what everybody says it is or thinks it is, or it's just amazing film music, and it was like going to graduate school, to just edit it. And so I learned so much, I think, about just how to handle an orchestra from doing all that editing, that later helped me when I was doing orchestral music after I left the company. But that said, like I said, there was only 3 hours of it. So and there was a lot of games, and a lot of that 3 hours is things like, you know, the romantic theme with Luke and Leia or whatever, which is not really going to work in almost any situation in the game. So then you're throwing out even more of the 3 hours. So maybe so you don't have a lot to work with. And so we had to be pretty creative. And one of the and at the same time, as you said, there were fan expectations. So one of the ways in which we're creative is Dave Levison and I. Dave Levison's a phenomenal electronic musician and composer, and he was part of the staff at that time. And we collaborated on what's it called? Force Commander. I feel like it's oh great! I'm gonna forget the name of this. It's that's not Force Commander. It'll come to me. We collaborated on a Star Wars game where we took what I thought was a pretty interesting approach, where we used Williams' music as kind of found objects in the context of a groove. So we'd have like drum machine sounds and like, you know, we'd process the music and do this kind of like and so it was pretty experimental in you know, in the sense that it was, you know, it was like we kind of made electronic music out of orchestral music. And the kind of crowning piece was we did a heavy metal version of the Imperial March, which I thought always should have been done, you know. And so we took my Marshall half stack, which is sitting over there in the corner still, and this is a 1971 JMP 1 with a massive Mesa cabinet. And I mean, if it's essentially Jimi Hendrix's rig, except he wouldn't have used a Mesa, but whatever. And you get distortion out of this amp by simply turning it up. And so you basically get it to where it's as loud as a jet engine, and then you're playing like metal on it. It's like a real sort of Black Sabbath. I mean, it's like it's a major freaking amp, right? And we hauled this thing into the recording room that we had there, and you know, people too, and we shut everything, and we cranked it up, and people 2 floors up were telling people, or 3 floors up were telling people 2 floors up to turn it down, right? So and so we caused a bit of a stir when we actually did the sessions, right? But you know, we wanted to have like I'm a big fan of the real deal, and so you know, as I've alluded to in terms of you know, some of these other, like the jazz and the rock and roll in Full Throttle. So, and we wanted to do this right. So so Dave played you know, these massive power chords through my Marshall half stack, and we recorded that, and we had this just what I thought was just the most righteous version of the Imperial March ever, and it went out into the world, and the fan reaction, let's just say, was mixed. One guy,
everybody thinks they own the franchise.
One guy wrote in and said I should be sent to the mailroom.
Oh no!
I got called up to the ranch because apparently John Williams' people were not happy, and I don't know that it was. I don't think he was bothered by it particularly. I think it was more maybe. Anyway, I got a bit of a lecture from Gordon Radley, who was George's kind of right-hand man, about, you know, these things, you know, we kind of got to kind of run this stuff by people first before we do something kind of this. So I got in a little bit of trouble. It wasn't that bad, but it was just kind of like, okay, well.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, and
In retrospect.
I in retrospect, again, I'm glad we did it, and I also think that you know, there does need to be respect for
Sure.
which I have absolutely nothing but respect for that music in all of its forms. I mean, it's just been so inspirational, and still is.
Well, after you left LucasArts in 2000, you were being an independent contractor and going out and just seeing what opportunities were out there. You've worked with Double Fine on quite a number of games that I've got stacked up here. Do you maybe want to talk about some of your favorite projects working with them?
No, they're all my favorite projects. I mean, that's I mean,
that's a good answer. It's a good answer.
Psychonauts was the first one that
pretty great.
I worked on. Yeah, Broken Age and Costume Quest. Costume Quest was after Psychonauts, and was it after Broken Age? I feel like it maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway, no, it wasn't. It was Costume Quest was before Broken Age. So yeah, I've worked on some amazing creative games for Double Fine and for Tim in particular. And I think Psychonauts was the first. And they were literally in a garage south of Market in San Francisco when we were doing that. So we were all a little bit challenged by budget in those days, but I think we came out with something that was a pretty cool game.
Absolutely, and I love it because it has that feel. It's got that. Everybody knows what that feel is of like these the Tim era at or the Tim projects there at LucasArts and all the Double Fine stuff. So it's really nice because it always feels like when these games come out that you're getting the gang back together for one more amazing adventure. And so that's I love Costume Quest. I think that's a lot of fun. It's just
that's a little smaller of a music project, but so charming. That's a very cool title. And
Brutal Legend. Oh yeah.
Brutal Legend was pretty awesome because you're scoring scenes with Jack Black and Tim Curry, which is hard to beat. And I also got to work with my friend Will Storkson, who's just a fantastic metal guitarist. He used to share stage with Metallica back when they were all sort of duking it out in the metal scene in San Francisco. And so yeah, that was very much an opportunity to channel my 14-year-old self, which is about what I was when the Black Sabbath record came out. And then there's Psychonauts 2, which is just a Jack Black on steroids. Did I mention? I did mention Broken Age, right? And that was also Jack Black. He had a role in that. Besides, anyway, that was a special project for me because my kids were pretty young at the time, and they were kind of waking up to the world in certain ways that they loved playing that game. And it was, there's a way Broken Age, is sort of a coming of age story in a certain way. And the other thing about it is there's a character in Broken Age that appears to be a wolf. And at the time we were living, we still live in the same place, but it's in West Marin, and there's a lot of natural beauty here, and that was similar to some of the landscapes in Broken Age. And this character that appears to be like a wolf, that reminded me of we actually lived up the street from a guy who had a real wolf, and a wolf is not the same thing as a German Shepherd. Let me tell you.
Mhm.
When you see one, you're like, oh my God, that's not a dog. That's something
No.
else.
Yeah.
And he would walk this thing with a mass. His leash was like a massive rope. It's like about that thick or something like that, right? And the wolf's name was Aku, which I think is Inuit for ice cream or something like that. And but at night, Aku would call,
Mhm.
and that sound I've recorded it. I'll never forget that sound. And that those calls actually inspired the theme for Merrick, who is the
Wow.
character in Broken Age, who appears to be a wolf.
Mhm.
So that's
That's
kind of
amazing. That's a great bit of behind the scenes. So but again, yeah, it's a beautiful game. It's a beautiful story, and I think that they're just it's one thing you can write a funny little game, you can write a Grim Fandango or something. I think it's tough to create these complex emotional experiences, which I feel like the games have grown up kind of with the audience too,
Yeah.
in a certain respect. And I think that audiences these days I mean, just look at the popularity of like walking simulators like Firewatch or Dear Esther and things like that, where it's just like you're on a rail, but you're just reading this interactive story, or people that have used, especially all the independent studios that have used things like Adventure Game Studio to kind of write these deeply personal stories.
By the way, Grimm has some pretty intense subject matter as well. So
It does.
it's
It's longing and loss and growth, and yeah, it's
and stuff like what happens when you die.
yes,
So,
yeah,
it's but I think Tim has always had a real balance between the light, the humorous, the sort of funny parts of life, and some of the more profound questions that we ask.
absolutely.
That's one of the reasons I really feel privileged to work with him.
Yep. Well, one last thing, let's talk about it. I know you've done so much, and we're just scratching the surface of this amazing career that you've had. But a few years ago, coming full circle back to Return to Monkey Island, working
Yes.
with Terrible Toy Box
Mm-hmm.
on kind of the most recent, hopefully not the last, but the most recent installment of the Monkey Island series. Do you maybe want to talk about how you got involved with the project, and Ron reaching out and saying, "Hey,
Yeah,
let's
Ron
do a
gave me a
thing."
call. Ron gave me a call, and I said, yeah, well, let's get the band back together. And so Michael and Clint and those are Michael's themes largely. I always looked. I'm a big theme guy, and I always like to do my own themes. But I always felt like the Monkey Island games were Michael's themes, and so anything that I did that was its own theme was actually typically just a sea shanty, like an actual sea shanty. So
Mm-hmm.
like the underwater music, which I was very happy to reprise in Return to Monkey Island.
Mm-hmm.
That is a traditional, British Isles sea shanty called Hullabaloo Ballet. And Michael used a couple of those too. There's the grog music is actually, I can't remember the name of the tune, but it's also a traditional melody. But it's, again, I'm a big fan of the real deal. So there were certain things that called for their own special, theme, and then other things where it's like, let's tap into reggae, let's tap into the tradition, the mariner and nautical traditions that are associated with pirates. So sea shanties was certainly big on the list. We also and then that there's a theme in there's a island in in Return to Monkey Island, which is inexplicably cold, right? And called Burr Island. And
Yes. It's quite cold there.
Yeah, it is for some reason. And it's pretty much like all of a sudden you're in Norway. And so the music that happens, was it in the contest? Oh, where is it? It's the contest in the eating hall.
Yes, where you have with the hagfish or whatever the fish of the. Yeah,
I believe it's that music that uses an actual Norwegian folk melody called. It's Norwegian for I'm forgetting the Norwegian now, but it's Peter der Spellbahn or something like that. It's literally Peter the Fiddler.
Oh, okay.
So I had to play violin on it, of course.
Yes.
And any Norwegian worth their salt was like, hey, you used Peter the Fiddler, and yeah, I did. So that's another folk influence there, and that was a very nice project to work on, and it really brought back those old days with and a lot of people. There were at least David Fox and Ron and Dave Grossman. I mean, they were all old LucasArts people.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a fun project, and I'm glad that everybody was able to get back together to work on it. That schedules kind of, made that possible, because it's quite a lot of fun, and it's very much. I got to talk to Dave a couple of months ago, and I was like, it's a love letter to everybody that loves that series and all of that. And it's got a great ending that just kind of is very much again another story of like kind of passing the torch, and it's as a dad, it made me kind of enjoy it at a different level maybe than other people and stuff. So yeah. But
for me, the music too, it was nice to do have the opportunity to do a live score and bring some of those, because I don't think some of those themes, like the main theme, didn't really have the level of production even in the later digital versions of the original Monkey series that we were able to do for this. And so I'm definitely grateful to Ron for that, because it was cool to actually bring that to a different kind of life.
Absolutely. Well, Peter McConnell, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope people at home have enjoyed this, and definitely head out. You can check out more information about Peter's amazing career over at Moby Games. And Peter, thank you again.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Buenos días.